Hi, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today I'm doing a guest designer blog for Stencil Girl, and this is all about creating a focus with stencils. So basically all this page is created with using stencils, and this page is being made by using my very favorite color. I'm not very much of a green person. I'd obviously done a project and had lots of green left over, and it was all painted in the background, so I decided why not challenge yourself and go with the flow and do something green, which I did. So the background paint is lime, and I just put some evergreen over the top and used one of the, I think it's Carol & Doobie stencils, which got lots and lots of text on it, and put it over the top and rubbed away the text. And then what I did was then put on some marine and lined up the stencil again and rubbed it away. So you've got all the full words of that stencil, but you've got that multicolored effect. And you can sort of see the difference where you've got the darker blue and the lighter green and so on. So it gives you this really cool and easy to do effect in the background. Looks like you spent a lot of time doing this, when in actual fact it hasn't taken much time to do it all. So one of the stencils I'm using now is called Peacock Girl, and it's one of my favorite stencils. It's very detailed, but you can get a beautiful result with it. And I'm stenciling over my background using Payne's Grey. So a lot of times when I want some darkness on the page, I actually turn to Payne's Grey instead of black, because it gives you the depth that you want, but it's just not quite as intense. The other thing that I'm doing, you saw me turn the stencil slightly on its sides there, because it is sort of a square shaped stencil. Some of the edges are a little bit truncated. They're not all as rounded as other sides. So I'm just using the extra feathers and sort of filling in the background. I then went in and painted the body, again using the Payne's Grey, but it was very, very dark, so I wanted to go back and put some of that texture in. So again, I've used the same stencil to put some words back into her chest, and you can see that sort of just connects the whole page together. Now, when doing this, or when working with the black, it's really important, if you are doing the ghosting technique with it, that you use a damp wet wipe. You don't want it to be particularly wet because it might smear underneath. So if you've got an apron or something, just pat it out on the apron first, so it's not particularly wet, but it's wet enough to lift up the paint. The next thing I'm doing is going in with another, I think, Carol & Doobie stencil, which is all about different words. And I love text on my art journal pages. They tend to sort of sum up what I want to say. So I'm just using some washi tape to mask off the words I actually need. Because everything's quite close together on this page, or on this stencil, having the washi tape in between just make sure that I'm getting the paint where I want it and not through in other places. So it's a handy thing to have. Final thing I'm going to do, not final thing, but one of the things I'm doing while I've got the white out is I'm just putting in the whites of the eyes on the stencil. So this is something I do a lot with any figures I add to my pages. I always put in the whites of the eye. And it just draws your attention straight to that area and makes it look like a face. At the moment, those eyes are a little bit hard to define. So by putting the white in, it just brings attention to that face. I'm also going in with the Stabilo Woody pencil in a similar colour to the background, so sort of turquoisey colour, just to put in some of the extra detail of the peacock feathers and to make it sort of stand out a little bit. I was finding when I was putting in the detail of the eyes with the paintbrush, it was just a little bit, my paintbrush, I found the paintbrush a little bit difficult to control. So quite often when I'm doing that detail of putting the eyes in, I do tend to use a paint pen to do that. I just find it a lot easier to control having the acrylic paint in the pen form rather than on a paintbrush. I'm a bit awkward when it comes to using paintbrushes, so if I can use my fingers or a paint pen, that's what I tend to do. To help pop the words out from the background, I'm just going around all the stenciled words in the grey with my paint pen and just putting a shadow, or I suppose a highlight, on the bottom left hand side of each of the letters. And I find if I do have that in my head, I get the shadow on the right edge of the letter each time. So just to make it look very dramatic, I decided to put on red lipstick and then decided that looked too dramatic, so I wiped it off again. And this is one of the great things about using acrylic paint, is once the background is actually dry, acrylic paint is permanent, so it's not going to go anywhere, which makes it really, really convenient when you make a mistake, which I do regularly with my artwork. So this is one of the Stencil Girl stencils called ACT Mix-Up by Seth Apter, and I decided to be very brave and actually cut it up into the sizes. And the reason I did that was they've got all these really cool patterns on them, but by having it in a full stencil and knowing how I stencil, I tend to get paint everywhere, or if it's too big, I sort of put it and it's hanging over the edge, and I get paint where I don't want it to be. So by breaking it up into the smaller parts of the stencils, it just meant that I was just getting paint where I wanted it to. And when I put the red on the lips, I really liked that pop of colour, but it just wasn't right on her lips. So I decided that I wanted to put it in the background. So this kind of works because obviously red and green are complementary colours. They're opposites on the colour wheel. So they really stand out against each other and give a really cool effect. And I decided by having just that little pop of colour behind her was just going to help frame her and push her out from the background. It did cover over some of my favourite bits of stenciling, but I can still see it up the top. And the great thing is, because it's quite a light dot pattern, you can still see through to the background. So, and I can see all that effect on her face as well, so I'm not really losing out on all that much. So here's a close-up of the final page. It was lots of fun to do. It's quite a simple technique to do, but just the layering over the stencils gives you such depth when you're working with them. So I hope you have a go at some ghosting of stencils and using text stencils and making a focus of your main image out of a stencil. Stencils are a wonderful tool to have in your toolkit, and I would be struggling if I didn't have them. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.